Okay, this particular project is about transforming a new cabinet out of an old cabinet that's essentially a different size, but using the same material to blend in to the old cabinets in the event, say, you have to pull out a cabinet to install a dishwasher and make more room. So what we have here is this cabinet I want to scale down somehow, and I'm just sort of experimenting as I go, but what I do have are my measurements, and I need this whole thing to be about 7 1/4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the sum of these 1 3/4 plus 1 3/4 and subtract that from 7. So I don't know what I just said there, but anyways, I was saying 1 3/4 plus 1 3/4 is 3 1/2. Okay, so I basically want 3 1/2 minus 7 1/4. So let's say there's my 7 1/4 right there, and I can either go back two ways to do this. Go back 1 3/4 to account for this piece I want in my cabinet. 1 3/4, or I could start on the inside and say 3 1/2, or 3 3/4. 3 1/2 would leave 3 3/4, which puts the mark right there. And that's where, and then as you can see, the measurements between there and there is 1 3/4. So I set my blade, or set my width to 5 1/2, and always to the inside of the blade, right? And I'm gonna just put the whole cabinet on there and go. And make sure that you don't have any metal objects in the way as well. Don't want to ruin your blade. So my cut mark is right here. So I'm going to miss everything right now, so I don't have to undo everything just yet. Now I cut that side, now I flipped it over, and now I'm going to cut the bottom side just the same way. My fence isn't tight. Now, this should be 5 1/2. Okay. That's perfect. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this other side and I'm going to cut it clean off here. So I'm going to cut that stuff out right in the middle. Of course, that's after I undo all that extra hardware, because that stuff is in the way now. So I measured my fence, 1 3/4. Which is the same measurement as that, right? So hopefully the blade goes right evenly and cuts cuts these legs off right on the line. That's what we're hoping. But first, I'm actually going to flip it over and cut this guy off first. Just because it's kind of in the way and making things cumbersome. I see a nail here, so I'm going to check and make sure my nail isn't. Whew. Okay. Looks like I got to undo a couple of nails first. So these little nails right here are right in the path of my blade. So I'm going to take this out with the hammer and the little claw. These are just tiny nails, not that big of a deal, but it's the best way to get nails out is one of these tools. And your saw blade will cut right through these nails, no problem. It dulls the blade a lot faster, and Lord knows, they're expensive too. If you saw that little piece fly back, that's why I always stand to this side of the table saw if I can. So in case pieces do fly back like that, they won't hit you directly or you know, kill you or whatever. Just gonna finish this little cut off with a hand saw. Actually, this piece doesn't even need to be in there. That's for a rack that's not going to fit anymore, so don't need that. I cut it all the way through, so this would hopefully be even. Okay, so theoretically, my cabinet's going to look something like that. That little piece chipped down in there, which kind of sucks, but I'll put some wood filler in there. So, here we go on to the next step then. Okay, one thing I got to make sure of is that now the floor that's in there now is 34 and a light half, and you can tell this is closer to 35. So I got to cut this to make sure it's a minimum of a light 34 and a half. So just going to take my drywall square here and square them up and draw a line. Just going to use the battery powered skill saw for this. Got to set my blade a little deeper. Now, a trick to following the line of a saw is if you are, well, cutting, the right hand stuff is getting discarded, you actually want to use this reference point here. But if the left hand stuff is getting discarded, you want to use the opposite reference point. So in other words, to the inside of the groove. So on these cabinets, since the bottom is all chewed up, I'm going to use some leftover pieces to reestablish the base that sits on the floor. They have kind of an even thing to sit on. So I'm going to take this over to the cutoff saw and cut it 19 3/4. I've got to go around the mess here. And I think these tools are pretty self-explanatory. Just measure and cut. So to attach this piece, I'm just going to use some glue, and I'm going to use a just a little pneumatic stapler. And probably some clamps. We'll see if I need those. Okay, get that far. I'm going to turn them over. So, obviously I want to double check and make sure this is still a light 34.5. And over here too, because we want the cabinet to sit somewhat level. You can see this is a little bit over, so I got to push him in just a little bit. Of course, that knocked the other side out. So where are we at now? Still got to come in. Come on. That's almost too much now. That appears to be really close. So, take my little stapler. Okay. And nothing. And I guess it would help if I turned my air valve on, but I should have also checked the staples. These are way too intense. So that's a good idea. Check and see what's in your gun before you use it. That's always a novel idea. Okay, now that I got the air turned on my gun, I can go ahead and snap a couple of those in. There we go. Now I'll do the other side. And I'm going to put a little block also in here. This gives up for my baseboard. There's a baseboard piece that goes in there. Just something to nail to when I get to that point. And then since this is loose here, I'm just going to drill a hole in here and then put a screw in it just to stabilize this after I put the clamp back on. So before I try to pinch this thing together, I want to make some pieces at the back. So if that little piece is 3/4 of an inch, I want it to go 5.5 plus another 3/4. And I want to make 3 pieces to staple here, 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 to tie to the back of this guy. So the back side of the cabinet can have something to connect to as well. Now that I got these little nailers up, I'll be able to have something to attach that piece to once this is on. Okay, so now that we're that far, the way I contend with this is I'm going to put a little glue on here, going to clamp these together, and then going to use a drill with the countersink. And so it drills and it sinks at the same time. So glue and clamp to pinch it together. And just a note, when you're putting pieces of wood together, no matter how you fasten things, whichever way you want to, it's always best to have things clamped first before you do your drilling and screwing and all that stuff, because it'll move on you if it's not clamped down. It just will. Okay, I got the glue on there, but a couple things I want to check and make sure before I pinch it down and fasten it is I want to make sure that there is some consistency here, that planes out, because I don't want these pieces to be cockeyed or crooked. So they should plane out this way, and it should plane out that way as well. So I got a clamp on the front part. I'm going to go ahead and start drilling this piece. Look at smoke, and my counterpiece might be getting dull. Plus it's old wood too. I'm going to use 2 1/2 for these. And I'm actually going to put one more clamp here. Just to make sure that face piece planes out good too. It's just really hard wood. And the very thing happened that I didn't want to, which is why I drilled a hole in the first place. So, isn't that frustrating? That's the whole reason you drill a hole in it, is so it doesn't fall apart. So now here's what I got to do now. So we got to tip this guy up, and we got to put some glue in there, and then we got to clamp him back down. So since that piece split on me, I'm going to take this drill to try to ream him out a little further. Got that clamp on there, tight. Still splitting apart. Well, now we get to have a little beauty mark there. It ain't gonna hurt nothing, and afterwards I'll even put a little bit of stain in there just to tie it together a little better. So here, gonna do it a little bit differently. I'm gonna take a longer drill bit, because I underestimated how hard and brittle this wood is, or at least how hard is it, easy it is to split it apart. So, got my countersink in there. Gonna drill this guy out a little bit further. Don't want to go all the way down, want the screw to have a little bit of bite. Got to leave this clamp on for a while. Now, supposedly, my little nailer blocks back here should be able to tack this guy together. If I was smart, I would have drew a pencil line on the outside, but I think I can see in here good enough. Yeah, I'm supposed to be wearing goggles and everything. Actually, where are my goggles? There they are. So I'm going to measure in here to see where this one's at. So I got to go 17 3/4. Guess the idea was to actually get him up there. Okay, I got one up there. Oops. Oops. There we go. Missing them all over the place. This guy around. Okay, as of right now, the cabinet's together. So I'm deliberating on, I think I'm going to cut this board down and just put one on there, and if I've got time, I think I'm actually gonna try to cut this guy down to size 2 and just make a new tiny little drawer out of it. I decided I am gonna try to put this drawer back on, just gonna make them smaller. First thing I gotta do is reinsert the bracket for the wheel, or for the roller to go on. I'm just going roughly in the middle. Well, it's supposed to be 7 1/4. This is 7 1/4, but down here it's 7 1/2. Well, that ain't no good. You can actually kind of see it bow out. So I undid the screw here, and I got to very carefully shim this guy down. So this piece will allow me to run my saw on, and I can very carefully cut that 1/4 inch out of that thing and try to shim my piece down a little bit so it's not a 1/2 inch out of square. So the next thing I'm gonna do is to cut this guy down. It's about a 1/4 inch overhang on each side, and I've got my mark right there, which is 4 1/2 inches, and I'm gonna go ahead and trim that guy down. That sucks. Well, so I'm going to contend with this problem by cutting the other end of that drawer off, which has that end, and I'm just going to glue them together to make my little door. And if you're worried about marring or putting a gouge in your product that you're working on, you can always put these shims or filler pieces in to absorb the pressure of the clamp. Okay, same principle here. The total width of this drawer, a small one, is 3 3/4. So there's my 3 3/4 mark. minus a 1/2 inch from this side, which puts it at 3 1/4. And when I put it all back together, it should be 3 3/4. And hopefully I can keep it from veering out a 1/2 inch this time. So I just had to cut my door open again, because when it was all said and done, it was about a 1/2 inch too big. So now I got to cut a 1/2 inch off of it and re-glue it again. And that's the way that ball bounces. So the underside of this is supposed to be just under 3 3/4. That way it'll fit inside the groove here, which is also, at least says 3 3/4. So I will re-glue that again, and hopefully this time it'll be the right it'll be the right deal. There's the box cut down. Got it drying for a minute. Just got this piece cut, so he's gonna sit something like that, and then he's gonna probably hang on there something like that. I'm probably gonna have to stain these sides a little bit to get them to tan up just a little. The next thing I want to do before I undo these clamps, I want to put a small hole in there and put a couple of small screws and tie these two pieces together, because there's going to be a handle on here that you're going to pull on, so I want it to be stronger than just glue reinforced. So before I took this off the other shelf, I drew a little black line right there to let me know where to reinstall that so I could hook it on. I just basically centered this as far as over as I could take it. Now I'll have to take that piece off again because I can't get it in with it on there, but I got the holes made for it, and hopefully be able to get a screwdriver in there once I get the drawer in the hole. Okay, got it lined up. Now I'm just going to put that next screw right there and tighten them up. Now I wanted to put this piece on last because I wanted to make sure it lined up with the other door. Even though this cabinet isn't perfect or anything like that, but there's nothing more distracting to the eye than having something that looks like this at the end of the deal. You can have some mistakes and blemishes, but you have something like that going on, or even worse, it's often cockeyed like that. That draws a lot of attention to the eye. So I was going to put this piece on at the end and hopefully not do what I just was telling you to not do. Piece I got to make here. Got to make some kind of a little bottom to go under there. So I had cut out that bottom piece, but the top was supposed to look like that, but I ended up making a mismeasurement and cutting those big holes out of it. So to rectify my little mistake there, it's just at the back of the cabinet, but sliding this little thing over. This is no big deal, but I'm just gonna glue these little squares that I cut out when I made my bad measurement, my bad cut. See, the front was supposed to look more like that and less like that back there. Okay, I think the cabinet's done. Next thing is to see if it fits in the space that it's supposed to go into tomorrow. All right.